This is Unit 3 Formative 1 Video 4's video on compound inequalities. For my first problem, I'm going to kind of give you a way to not write the inequality. And this is one way to not do it correctly. So this is a no-no. We cannot do this. Alright, so the reason why you can't do it is I'm going to show you here in a bit. But let's just say we can solve this. We're going to solve this down. If I'm solving for x here, I notice I have an x minus 3. I'm going to add 3 to everything that we have here. Every part. So I'm going to add 3 to every part. -5 plus 3, that's -2. We have x here, and we have 13 there. The way we have it is x is between -2 and 13. But my inequalities, if we're thinking about it, we're actually doing the opposite. And let me show you when we do the graph here. So when I do the graph here, let me get some space here. When I do a graph here, if I see what it's saying, it says x. I'm going to flip that order. I like the variable on the left side. X is less than 2. We also see x is greater than or equal to 13. Okay, so I'm just going to do some plotting here. -2, about right there. Let's just say 0 is here. 13's a little further away from 0 than -2 is, so we're going to put it like right about here. On -2, I'm going to do an open circle, and 13, I'm going to do a closed circle. Now, it says less than -2, so that means I should be going this way. And then it says greater than or equal to 13, so that means I should be going that way. And the reason this is a no-no problem is because our variable x is written in between. However, my inequalities are not written in between. So really, the way to write your answer is not this. You do not want to write this as my answer. You're going to write this as my answer. This is what we call an OR inequality, okay? It's an OR because we have two separate shaded areas. Let me just get those shaded here. There's two separate areas. In future problems, when we see something like an AND compound inequality, then it's okay to write it like we did above. But since it doesn't really work, we do not want to do it this way. Don't do it this way for an OR problem. So don't do this for an OR problem. Okay, let's do our interval notation because we can do that. We have two parts. We have -infinity to -2. That's on my left part. Again, it's going left on that, so infinity goes first. It's open, so I use a parenthesis. I'm going to use the U for union because there are two parts. And then on the right side we have 13, and it's going right, so it's going to positive infinity. So we use a bracket on that one. On problem 2 here, notice how it looks like the same thing in terms of the format, but the inequalities are flipped around. This is what we say an AND inequality is, AND compound inequality. It's okay to do it this way, okay? We can have it in this format. This is the type we want it to look like. So when I do my solving, I'm just going to write this out here. We're multiplying by 4 first. Multiply by 4 first. Because then they cross out. So we're left with 2 plus x. 3 times 4 is 12 here. -3 times 4 is -12. I'm going to keep my inequalities the same. And then we're going to subtract 2 from all parts. So it says negative 14 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 10. Now, it's an and because you'll see here in a bit what happens when we do our shaded region. So when I get my graph started here, 10, let's say 10's about here in relation to 0, but negative 14's a little further away. On negative 14 and 10, they're both closed because they both have an equal part. They have the line underneath it. So let's think about what it says. It actually says x is greater than or equal to negative 14. Okay, so that means I go to the right on that. The other part says x is less than or equal to 10. Well, that goes left. And what's going to happen is the shaded regions collide, which is why we say this is an and one, because x can meet the requirements of both inequalities here. So that's why it's okay to write this as my answer. Okay, this is my answer. This is okay as well. All right, so I shade that in, and we do our interval notation. Well, our interval is much smaller. It's between two numbers. It starts at negative 14 and ends at 10. Both are closed, so we use brackets. All right, here's another way of starting off an OR inequality. And you could have two different types of inequalities here. So we're going to just solve them down. All right, so here I have 4 minus x. I'm going to subtract 4 since it's positive. The negative is on your x, so it's negative x is greater than or equal to negative 2. I divide by negative 1. Keep in mind, I'm dividing by a negative here. So x is going to now be less than or equal to. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 is positive 2. Just dropping my OR here. Here I'm just going to divide by 3. Divide by 3. X is greater than 4. So that's my solution set. Let's do a graph. I'm actually going to try to make a nice number line here. Okay. Let's go 0, 2, 4. On 2, I put a closed circle because it's equal. On 4, I do an open because it's not equal. It's just greater than. Let's see. Less than 2. Less than, that means that way. Greater than 4. That means to the right. So I'm shading this side. And I'm shading this side. Okay, so that means I have two intervals. Again, the left one, that's negative infinity because you're going left to right. And it stops at 2. Use a bracket because it's open, or sorry, because it's closed. It then takes a break and it picks back up. All right, so I'm going to use the U here. It picks back up, starting at 4 and going to positive infinity as it goes right. Again, use a parenthesis on the 4 because it's open. Here's a word problem here. A teacher knows the majority of her students will score within 4 points of the class mean of 84%. Write an inequality that represents the test scores. So what numbers are 4 points within an average of 84? Okay, so if you think about it on the number line, if 84 is in the middle, well, what's 4 away from that? What's 4 more than that? Well, that's 88. What's 4 smaller than that? Okay, well, that's 80. Okay, so if I'm writing an inequality here that represents this, so that the majority of her scores are within 4 points, it's going to be an and inequality here. It's going to be between two numbers. Okay, so the scores are going to fall between these two numbers. That means we don't want it smaller than 80. So that means it's like x is greater than 80. And again, we don't want it to be bigger than 88. So it's and, again, I said it was an and. So it's and going to be less than 88. So let's fill in our inequality here. Again, we're going to do the opposite, the reverse one, and then we keep this one the same. Now, can the scores be 80 and 88? They sure can. So we're going to make sure that we have that line underneath to say that they can be. Lastly, your golf scores are an 87 and a 93. What possible score can you earn on your next outing to have an average between 89 and 95? Write your answer in interval notation. Okay, so here's a score, here's a score. We're going to figure out what is the next score, okay? So if I'm doing an average, think about average. Well, if I'm averaging, I have to add them up, okay? 87 plus 93. We want what's the next score. We want what is the next outing, okay? So that's going to be x. We don't know yet. So how many scores are there? Well, we're averaging 3 of them, okay? We know the averages we know that our score should give us an average that falls between these two numbers, 89 and 95. Should be between those two numbers. So your average is between. Again, notice how I'm putting the average in between the 89 and the 95. In between the 89 and the 95. Here's my average. All right, so if I'm going to be between, I can't have it less than this. So the average is bigger than 89 and less than 95. Is it okay to have the average be 89 and 95? Sure it can. So we're going to make sure it's equal to as well. So now we're just going to simplify and write our answer in interval notation here. So let's do some math. When I solve 87 plus 93, that is going to be 170, that's 180 plus x over 3. Just going to drop everything else. We're then going to multiply both sides by 3 to get rid of the fraction, or actually all sides by 3. So when I do that, I'm going to get 180 plus x in the middle. 89 times 3, so 3 times 9 is 27. Carry the 2. 8 times 3 is 24, 26. So 267. And then 95 times 3, that looks like that's going to be 285. And then we subtract our 180. We get 87 and 105. Okay, so there's my inequality. If I'm doing interval notation, that's falling between 87 and 105, between 87 and 105. Okay, we use brackets because they are equal. All right, there's your video. Kind of a lengthy one, so make sure you take your time on this. You guys have a good day.